begin this tomorrow.
I'm actually a bit behind, so I'm gonna cheat on mine.
Not bad. Oh god.
Sam's coughing.
What is it? What is it?
I just told Eitan that I'm not coming.
Oh, you're not coming?
I've got a lot to do.
Well, let's see.
We'll see you. Eitan have to ask a lot of questions.
Okay, are we on?
Yep.
All right, here we go. So we are continuing in sugya of aseh, derashah. Oh wow, this is good. Just what we need. At 11, that means I have 26. Says the Gemara, Dam Beis in the top. So we're in the middle here of the sugya. So we said that the source for aseh derashah in the Torah is, how do we know aseh derashah? So you have the top line down Alf. Loso b'shanis gadilim tasalach. So you don't wear sha'atnez, but you put on tzitzis. So we learn out smichus. One is written right next to the other that you put on tzitzis even when there's climb, if necessary. We said that even Rabbi Yehuda, who doesn't darshan smichus in the rest of the Torah, but in Sefer Devarim, where the pesukim appear, he will darshan smuchim. And we said the reason for it is one of two reasons: either because there's some kasha question that he has, it's muchach, that requires him to darshan it, or it's mufne, or there's something that's extra in the Torah that requires him to darshan it. So we went through a different example of that. Now we're going to come back to tzitzis and explain how tzitzis also exemplifies that. V'gabi tzitzis nami, also by tzitzis, tzitzis also has these reasons. Either because there's something questionable that has to be explained, and therefore he darshan the smichus, or there's something that's extra. So here we explain. Either because there's some question that he forces him to because if you don't darshan the smichus between tzitzis and kolayim lichtevei rachman agabi parsha tzitzis. So the question is, why does the Torah say gedilim tasalach over here in Sefer Devarim? Why doesn't it say gedilim tasalach put on tzitzis by the parsha of tzitzis? Why is it written specifically over here? It must be because it's in order to connect it to the losaseh of climb, to say that even if there's climb, you still put on tzitzis. Another answer is because it is something extra. Let's see. Kosav, the pasuk says, "Ubeged climb Sha'atnez lo yala lech." We're on Donim Abiz 4b. 6 lines from the top. The pasuk says, "Ubeged climb Sha'atnez lo yala lecha." The pasuk already says, "Don't put on Sha'atnez." Lo silba Sha'atnez lamali. So what do you need another losa to say? Don't wear Sha'atnez. Shmamino Lafnuye teaches that there's, because it's an extra pasuk, it's for a smichus. It's in order to teach you that even if there's climb, we are going to wear the tzitzis if necessary.
4b?
Yeah.
Yevamos?
4b Yevamos, and now we are...
Yeah, we're a little higher up in the pages.
We're just doing the Mishnahs, right?
No, we're in the Gemara. Yeah. This is the sugya of aseh derashah, where if you have a conflict between a positive commandment and a negative commandment, there's a conflict because the positive commandment says to do something and the negative commandment says don't do something. And it's the same act. So which one do you follow?
Oh, so I said no, I'm not in the right place.
Hani mitzruch.
It's a
Hani.
Wait, okay.
Higher up?
Higher up, yeah.
Okay.
So the Gemara says...
Hane mitzrach.
Yep.
Mitzrach, okay.
Hane mitzrach tzrichi. Both of these pesukim that talk about the losaseh of wearing sha'atnez, climb, are necessary, and therefore there's nothing extra, which will bring us back to our question. How do you know to darshan the smichus between climb and tzitzis to say that if you need to wear climb on your tzitzis, that you still wear tzitzis? Because it's an aseh that's docha lo aseh. So because the Torah just said don't put it on. Havamina kol derachah lo aser. So Aleph Ayin Lamed sounds like just putting it on, even if it's not technically wearing, a clothing, a milva, malbush. It's just placing it upon, like a talus. literally put it on, and you put on some type of cloth upon you, will be also Rahman. I feel a and it's even more than that. Even as if someone's coming to sell clothing, he's not even coming to wear it. He's just coming to sell it, and he's wearing it as he sells it. Has the Torah? No. It's only similar to wearing clothing, and how do we classify that? We're going to identify levisha as there's benefit. Now, someone who's coming to sell clothing, if just because he's wearing suits, because he wants to show people how nicely it fits, he has no benefit in the actual wearing. His benefit is for money, because now he's able to make a sale. But that's not called levisha of hana. And therefore, there's no isser if you have climb on that suit. It's fine. Because Rahmano l'silbush, and if the Torah just said l'silbush havamina dafka levisha denofish aniyasa. Little silbush has a connotation of lots and lots of benefit. So maybe only there it's aser. Allah, but if it's just, a scarf or something like that, it's not so much benefit. So lo, because Rahmano lo yala lecha, you can't even put it on, even a scarf, something like that. It's not so much benefit, you can't do it. Fine. So that's why we're left with a question now. We don't have any extra pasuk. If you don't have any extra pasuk, and your opinion is that you need something extra in order to darshan this michos, so then there's nothing extra here to darshan aseh dochalosaseh. That if you have climb with tzitzis, that you still wear the tzitzis if necessary. Imkain, Tomorrow says no. Imkain lichter rachmana l'sulba Sha'atnez serum mero pishtin lamali. Tomorrow finally says there's a different part of the pasuk that's extra. Yeah, we need to say the losa say not to wear Sha'atnez, but you didn't have to identify what Sha'atnez is. Say that it's semer and pishtin. We know that. How do we know that? Michti, kosavu beged kolaim Sha'atnez sulayalalecha. The other pasuk already said, expressed the isser of kolaim Sha'atnez as a beged. Don't put on a clothing of kolaim. Beged kolaim. Okay, so what is beged kanot? What's the connotation of beged? V'tana debirei shmal hoel v'nemru b'Torah stam begadim. Since the Torah mentions begadim, the word clothing, begadim, just like that. And one of the times the Torah said the word beged, clothing, the Torah specified semuchin. They specified these materials, the cotton and the wool and the cotton. Af kol semer upishtim. So that's supposed to be a limud, supposed to teach you that anytime it says the word beged in the Torah, according to the Tana Shmuel, it's specifically, uniquely referring to these materials. Beged which is made from wool, beged which is made from cotton. But any other material, we wouldn't identify it, wouldn't refer to it as a beged in the Torah. So therefore, we're saying semer upishtim because Rahman Olam. So according to Tana Shmuel, the word semer upishtim written in the Torah, that these are the materials which are also to put together and climb, is unnecessary. It's extra. Shmamino lafnui. So it's extra to teach me that you're supposed to make a derashah. The derashah again, back to Dalar Manaf, top line, that lusul b'Sha'atnez, don't wear climb, but gadilim ta'ase. If it's a question between not wearing Sha'atnez and wearing Tzitzis, and you can't figure out how to fulfill both, you even put on climb on the Tzitzis and you wear the Tzitzis.
Where are these two pesukim? Is it two pesukim? It's not two pesukim. Beged climb Sha'atnez lo yala alacha.
Yeah.
And then lo yilba Sha'atnez. Those are not the same pasuk, no?
The two different pesukim, correct.
At the same place, even in the same place, not in the same
No,
place.
not at all. Sefer Vayikra, Sefer Dvarim.
Essentially, the Torah or doesn't bring the pasuk for the. I mean, doesn't your Gemara?
Well, it does not, but it's the same pasuk. They probably, because the same pasuk on off the top line, so they bring it there.
Oh, okay.
That's I believe it's a Kiseitse in Sefer Dvarim, and the other one is Vayikra.
It's explaining Yilbash Tamar Pishtim, and then we're saying over here. Beged climb Sha'atnez lo yala lecha. And then it goes back and forth, and it concludes that what's the extra here? In the first pasuk, it's the fact that it says lusil bash semer upishtim, and the other pasuk already said beged.
Correct.
Meaning beged kalayim, and it says lo yilbash Sha'atnez. Beged kalayim Sha'atnez. So we know from the second pasuk that beged means semer upishtim, based on this drush from Tana Debi Shmuel. So that's extra. That's what Gemara concludes is extra.
Right. You're making a good point. It's two different pesukim we're connecting. Right. There's a two pesukim of Sha'atnez, one here, one here. But one of the pesukim it says that refers to the Sha'atnez as a beged of Sha'atnez, clothing of Sha'atnez. Tana Debi Shmuel says that the word beged always in any place in the Torah is going to be referring to materials made only uniquely from wool or cotton, semer pishtin, and according to that, we're going to go to the other pasuk of Sha'atnez, which is the same lav, it just repeats it, and we're going to understand that there also, it's understood. What's the isser of Sha'atnez? The connection between making a beged with these two materials, the semer and the pishtim, the wool and the cotton. Okay, so far, so good. Says the Gemara now. Vakati, we're halfway down the Vakati Itzrich. You still need the pasuk. The pasuk is not extra. The pasuk of Lo Tzitzis Sha'atnez Semer Pishtim Yachdav. Says why? Because Salka Daito Chamino Halo Hi Delo Nofish Hanoso. Havolavisha the Nofish Hanayoso Kultri Mini Aser. This is really Eitan's point right now. That could you really pull over from one pasuk to the other just because in one pasuk beged is only materials of semer pishtim? Does that really show you in the other pasuk is only materials of semer pishtim? The Gemara's arguing perhaps not, because even if you see by the isser of halal, which is less benefit, it's just a connotation of putting something on. Lav dafka is so much benefit that there it's limited to the materials of semer and pishtim, but in the other pasuk of levisha, which expresses a more benefit. Nofish haniyasa, there's a lot. Kultur mini aser. Maybe the Torah would aser all types of materials when you put them together. Meaning, the idea here would be, there would be a havamina, you would have thought that any clothing that you wear cannot have two different materials sewed together. You have to have only made out of one material. Really interesting havamina.
So it's right, silbash, which is a greater hana, could be any material. But yalla has to be semer pishtim because where it says lo yalechas, it says the word beged.
Exactly.
So, but now that I say semer pishtim by silbash, so even the greater hana still has to be
right.
semer
Exactly.
pishtim.
And that's why we're back to our question: is there really something extra in the pasuk?
So you might have thought wool and cotton would be forbidden, asur, but it's not. It's just wool and linen.
Yeah, right. You would have thought that other materials would. Well, it
you
depends
mix-
on and the level of wearing them like a coat versus wearing them just like kind of putting it on you.
Yeah, you would have differentiated. You would have said if you're just suddenly putting clothing on you, you're not doing a full wearing, so there's not so much benefit in that. So there you would have thought that that's where the Torah is specifically answering these materials, right? The semer and the pishtim. I'm calling linen and cotton the same because they're the same.
Okay.
So wool and whatever you want to call it, linen. It grows as cotton, but we call it linen when it's made into clothing.
Okay.
So then you would think only those two, but other materials, whatever with polyester, right, something like that, right?
No problem.
That would be not a problem. But we would have thought that when it comes to actual clothing that you're wearing as much greater hana, much greater benefit, there we would actually say any types of materials would be asur. And then says the pasuk, no, everything is only going to be asur if it's uniquely tzemer and pishtim. It's got to be the wool and the linen. Says the Gemara. So imkein, no. Imkein lishta kromine. I'll tell you why there's something extra. The pasuk could have kept quiet from the word semer pishtim. V'teisi Sha'atnez malo. No, there's a gzeir shava. We have a rule in the Torah. If you have the same word in two places, Sha'atnez and Sha'atnez, you actually will learn it. Even if there's a svara l'chalik, there's some logical reason to differentiate. Here there's more hana, there's less hana. But Sha'atnez is a gzeir shava. Derashah says you pull it over. You pull over the idea from one place to the other place. Fine. So that's the conclusion so far. Says the Gemara, Tana de Berishmal. Let's just focus back. Come back. Let's revisit Tana de Berishmal. His idea that because it says one time in the Torah beged, which is, by the way, in Tazria, by the Nagayim, by Tsaras, it says beged semer, beged pishtim. So that's the source for every beged in the Torah. Always refers to materials of either semer or pishtim, or both. So according to our Torah Yishmael, time of the Kaz Rachamana semer pishtim. It's only because the Torah said semer or pishtim in this pasuk in Sefer Devarim that will teach him. There's something extra here to teach me the smichus that you're supposed to connect this lav with the mitzvahs aseh of tzitzis and aseh derashah. Halav achi, if it didn't Torah did not say semer pishtim, klayim tzitzis havamina das rachmana. Then we're trying to say we would have thought that if you have an aseh of tzitzis, you have four-corner beged, and you have in front of you a mitzvah aseh to put on tzitzis, and then in contrast to that, you have the only way you're going to be able to put it on is by putting on klayim. That's the only materials you could use. So we would have thought that you don't do that because you're not allowed to. It's klayim. V'haksiv, the problem is to say such a.
What's kalayim mean?
Kalayim means the sewing together, the clothing which sews together the semer and the pishtim. Sha'atnez. Sha'atnez is the. The problem is, if you're going to try to say that, Vaksiv also lehem tzitzis al kanafei vigdeim. The pasuk by tzitzis, we say this in tzitzis, right? Put on tzitzis on the corners of your clothing. That's what it says. V'tana the berishmal, we had this berishmal again. He said, kol begadim. Anytime it says begadim, semer pishtim. What is a beged? It's semer or pishtim, or both. That's it. What is the Torah saying? The Torah is saying, put on tzitzis, these strings with the tchelis, on the clothing, and the clothing is either tzemer or pishtim, either one. Put on tchelis. Now, tchelis is a color. Tchelis is a dye that's taken out of whatever fish or creature that it comes from. But Chazal tell us, u'tchelis amru. Whenever we talk about that dye being put onto a material, the material is always the material of wool. We don't talk about tchelis on any other material. In the Torah, when we say tchelis, it's specifically the dye of tchelis on wool. We might do tchelis amrahu. How do I know that's true? Midas sheish kisna. The fact that the word sheish in the Torah refers to the pishtan, the flax, the linen. Tchelis amrahu. So we'll learn out from there that tchelis in the Torah is wool. Now, what exactly does that mean? So Rashi goes through the calculation here. There is a pasuk in the Nach that teaches
I
us.
have a question. So when you have tchelis on people on their tzitzit,
Yeah.
what's the other material? The white in there.
Are usually nowadays the wool. In general we still use
So
wool.
it's wool and wool.
Yeah.
It's blue wool and a white wool. Okay.
Exactly. The white one is just not dyed. Not necessarily. It doesn't have to necessarily be like that, but in almost many. I would say the majority of all the talisim now are like that. For sure, the big talisim, for sure. So there's sources that the clothing of the Kohen that he wears, there's two materials which are used. And that is this sheish, this, we're going to call it pishtan, as we know. It's the linen. And the other material is the samer, it's the wool. And if those are the two, when the pasuk says michne sevad sheish mosh zor, says Rashi, bad is the pishtan. And then when you have these other colors which are talked about by the Big Day Kahuna, it's going to be the other material which is talked about by the Kohen, which is the Tzemach. So if that's the case, then you end up having the Midashesh Kisna Techelas Amrahu. So you end up having Oslam Tzitzis Akan Vidim. How do you read that pasuk? The beged is made out of tzemer or pishtim. It says put on tzitzis. It says put on tchelas on the tzitzis. Tchelas has to be wool. So you're putting on wool on strings, right? Woolen strings on a clothing which is made out of what? Either wool or linen. So you see that the Torah clearly tells me that you could put on wool strings on linen clothing. That's Sha'atnez. So you see straight out that you could do it. So why do you need the extra semuchin that the Gemara talked about before? Says the Gemara, no, you need that semuchin, the extra words to teach me. I would have thought Rava, like Rava. Rava argues on Rabbi Shmuel. Rava Rami. Rava has a stira. Ksiv hakanaf. So the pasuk says hakanaf. Let's read the whole pasuk. Nosanu al tzitzis hakanaf. You should put on tzitzis hakanaf the corner psul techelas. The tzitzis which are on the corner of the bag, you put on psul techelas. So Rava understands that the word hakanaf means mikanaf, that the tzitzis should be made from the same material as the corner. Uchasiv. And the other pasuk says semer pishtim. Semer and pishtim. It's a baggin made out of semer or pishtim. So is it made from the tzitzis or the semer pishtim? The tzitzis, the tchelis is made from only semer. Okay, it said semer pishtim potrim b'im minam shlom minam. So if you have semer pishtim strings, that's going to be enough for a bagged, whether the bagged is a material of semer pishtim or any other material. Sharminim, but if the strings are made out of any other type of material, b'minam potrim shlom minam potrim, they only will work if the bagged is that same material. If it's a different material, it will not work. That's the way he resolves this contradiction.
5-minute shower. This is a very complicated.
To which the Gemara says, a few more lines here before I have to stop. How can you tell me that you would have said like Rava? The whole sheet of Rishmal, it's not like Rava, because Rava is assuming in his whole idea here that when Torah says bagged, it doesn't have to be specifically made out of semer or pishtan. It could be made out of any material. That's the way he resolves the issue. Rishmal doesn't hold to that. So he doesn't hold that. You're back to the question. Then you don't need the word semer or pishtan extra. Finally, Gemara says, You would have thought to make the implication that Rava makes, which is hakanaf, min kanaf. Meaning, you're right. We'll start off with the assumption like Rishmal that the baguette has to be made out of either wool or linen in order to have an obligation to put on tzitzis. But you still would have made a mistake, and that is, it would have said hakanaf, min kanaf. Ovi leitzemer, pishtim, pishtim. When you have a woolen clothing, four-corner garment put on strings which are wool. When you have a four-corner pishtan linen garment put on strings which are pishtan. If you, in the case where you're putting on the woolen strings on the woolen beged, save, that's when you put on the tchelos. You wouldn't have necessarily known that you're allowed to put on Sha'atnez. You could put on the wrong, right, the opposite gender clothing, the material for that clothing. The tzemer, wool for the linen, and linen for the wool. And therefore the Torah had to tell me specifically, extra words, something's extra here to teach me the derashah and smichos between that pasuk and the pasuk of Tzitzis.